Ladies and gentlemen, some of you may not know that the tobacco industry, even when our people were in chattel slavery, heavily pushed smoking among the slaves. And well after slavery was over, cigarettes were heavily pushed in the Black community. I remember seeing all the billboards when I was growing up, and a lot more people smoked back then. But believe it or not, despite the fact that they have pushed us really hard in the Black community, smoking is at an all-time low among us now. So it just go to show you propaganda can only stretch so far. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is not unusual for you to see pictures like these old vintage pictures, and you'll see children smoking because back then it was acceptable. And because my family was from the South, we would go down there. And I remember seeing the Black advertisements for Camel cigarettes. And and then when I was a teenager, I saw them heavily push Virginia Slims, and I would get like the Ebony magazine and Jet magazine, and all the you would have pictures of Black women holding the Virginia Slims and all of that. Billboards of Cools and Newport everywhere, you know? And, the tobacco plantations were a big industry, especially in the South. So it was not unusual for you to see pictures like these of even children smoking cigarettes, ladies and gentlemen. It was more common than uncommon. So this article came out in KQED, the Black community a target for the tobacco industry since slavery. And it's sad but true. Have you ever looked at the Center for Disease Control page that highlights the tobacco industry impact on African Americans? It's horrifying. According to the data, Black folks say they want to quit smoking more than other demographics, but failed more often. We are more readily exposed to secondhand smoke than other groups. And we live in communities where smoking advertisement disproportionately saturated the market, especially ads for menthols. Absolutely. I remember seeing those ads. They would show you the non menthol and the menthol cigarettes, and all brands. I mean, every single brand out there had a menthol and non menthol. And big bold letters in the center of the page, it's tobacco use is a major contributor to the three leading causes of death among African Americans: heart disease, cancer, and stroke. And quite naturally, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of times these habits were passed down as well. So you got to look at how long Black people in this country have been smoking. Started in chattel slavery all the way up until today. It's been that long. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the one thing they would let slaves do is smoke, you know, go figure. Give you bad things to eat and smoke. Yeah, the numbers are up to date and the same. This issue isn't anything new. It's been like this for ages. Some might say it's been like this since our ancestors were enslaved on the tobacco farms in the Carolinas. Uh, I'm looking at it from a slavery to vaping. Okay. Yeah, vaping is a whole different thing. And that's really messing a lot of people up too, that vaping. And that's absolutely true. But one thing just looking at my own family, the younger generation, they tend not to smoke as much. Now, when I was coming up, a lot of the elders in the family would smoke. And I guess I wasn't quite understanding why so many of them were smokers. But when you see an article like this, you kind of understand why a lot of them old people were all smoking. All of them were smoking, every last one of them. Both of my grandfathers on my mother and father's side, they smoked. Um, I had quite a few of my aunts smoke. Many of them have quit years ago. They have quit. And I had cousins that were smokers, and many of them have quit. So there's not quite as many, but I know Black people still smoke because when I'm in the stores, I still see some of them buying cigarettes, but it's still not as much as I saw years ago. Um, especially among the teenagers. The teenagers have definitely cut down on a lot of the smoking. Now, the teenagers of my time, those were some big smokers. They were big smokers, way bigger than what I'm seeing today. So, lead artists and curators of the same game, different smokers, and you can see the ads they had out. And this one was during the Jim Crow era, right here. And this one is for Newport's 2007 menthols. And I know that firsthand. I remember going down south and seeing all the depictions of Black people in ads holding cigarettes, whether it was a drawing or an actual picture. But it was heavily promoted. An exhibition about tobacco industry preying on African Americans isn't new. There have been many others, but many of them look at the 1950s and 60s, according to Brown. I make the case that the tobacco industry has been targeting the Black community since the 1600s, she says. Brown uses archival images depicting Black people from the last decade as well as from the last century. She compares the posure of the people in the photos combined with the data collected from the industry documents, and it shows all as evidence of why 45,000 African Americans die from smoking every year. But Brown, who works with the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council, says San Francisco recent passage of legislation banning the sales of e-cigarettes is a glimmer of hope. Yeah, them e-cigarettes are tearing people up. I'm seeing they having all kinds of lung problems and everything. And there's been some deaths from the e-cigarettes. And maybe it may be a sign that big tobacco is losing control. She adds, it's unfortunate that change has been spawned by headline after headline of vaping deaths, largely in white communities. But maybe it'll open the conversation to smoking's impact, past and present, on the Black community. Many people have sued the tobacco industry for smoking deaths. This wouldn't be a bang to add to reparations. How we were heavily targeted by the cigarette industry in this country. According to the CDC, over 7 out of 10 African Americans ages 12 to 17 years who smoke use menthol cigarettes. I asked a dumb question that needed to be asked. Why do Black folks like menthol? Brown says, we tend to lean towards menthol, not because of a natural inclination, but what happens with menthol when you smoke it. It It's the sweeten. It sweetens the taste of tobacco, cools down, and numbs your mouth and throat. The kids like menthol and mint flavors. But the Black community isn't unique in liking menthol products, says Brown. What's unique is the tobacco industry using Jet Magazine and Ebony. That's where I used to see it growing up, y'all. We used to get those magazines in the mail. And I would always see those ads with Black people, menthol, cools, and menthol. You would have the Newports and all of them, Salem, all of those cigarettes were advertised in those magazines because I would see them and attaching them to images of us that are very attractive. There was a time when this person is Brown is saying they smoked menthols as a teenager, but during the short stunt, on one fateful day, I put a partially lit Newport into my pants pocket while rushing to jump the 58 bus in downtown Oakland. Wow. And that's what it took for them to kick the habit. Yeah, I bet that tore your ass up. Some people aren't as lucky to feel the pain of smoking so acutely. For most of my friends at this age, it's habitual. But at one time, I recall them telling me it was about a feeling or just about access or simply an analgesic thing. Brown says, okay, let me just go down some. There are reportedly documents that show that tobacco companies like Philip Morris have been engaged with the NAACP, the National Urban League, and the United States, the United Negro College Fund since the 1950s. So, ladies and gentlemen, the industry don't mind giving us something like smoking. They never seem to have an issue with that. One thing I do have a question. I used to see a lot of white people that would get lung cancer and all kinds of conditions from smoking sue the tobacco company. I don't recall seeing a lot of Black people do that over the years. I mean, I'm not saying that there were none, but every time it was a public case, I would always see white people and they would be on oxygen or they would, have all kinds of issues with throat cancer, and they would be public with their cases against the big tobacco companies. But I hardly ever seen people in the Black community take on these tobacco companies and sue them in the same manner. Now, there could be some cases out there, but I sure didn't see them coming up. That's all I'm saying. Prior to doing any research, Brown already presumed the people who run the industry were shisty. Digging into old reports and data confirmed the assumption. And talking to people about firsthand experiences brought further revelations about the size of the tobacco industry target on the Black community. One guy told me his mom would leave a lit cigarette in each room. Wow. Ooh, that is bad. So she'd have something to smoke as she walked through the house. So, ooh, that house had to be very smoke filled. A cigarette in every room? Ooh. She's been impacted by smoking on a personal level, too. She lost 6 close family members from tobacco. One of my favorite aunts died this year. She said she was a chain smoker. She told me her aunt's name was Victoria, Aunt Vicky, who loved gardening and watching movies, and she could talk mess with the best of them, said Brown, who used to visit her all the time in Florida. Yeah, see, these are the ads I would see growing up. The same kind of ads that you're seeing here advertised in those Jet magazines and Ebony. Of course, it was 40 acres and a mule, supposedly granted to former enslaved folks by the Freedmen Bureau, and they gave that to the white immigrants that came over. That's why that's why the black community did not get it. And of course, it was agricultural land in South Carolina where they most likely grew tobacco. Yeah, easy to move a tobacco crop. But you know what? The thing is, the country that consumes the most tobacco in the world now is China. They are the biggest ones on earth now. And that's probably one of the biggest contributing factors to why they are in Africa, because it's a lot of tobacco grown in Africa. Very accessible for them. But Brown, a proud San Francisco native, says San Francisco is doing something significant with its e-cigarette ban, hence her desire to hold the opening here. Ultimately, she wants to spread the word and bring an exhibition to other cities, get the FDA to step up to the plate and see something happen on a federal level. At the same time, Brown isn't waiting on elected officials. No, we can't wait on them for anything, not even reparations. We already know where elective officials stand. They don't like the black community. They just want the black votes. That's all they want. They don't want anything but the black votes. But other than that, they don't really like us around. They don't want to do anything for us. They want to continue the benign and neglect and go on with their political careers while just coming to us each election cycle and smiling in our faces. That's all they want. And they don't want that to change. But it's up to us to make it change. She wants families to be proactive too. And she's extending an invitation to all school districts to take a school trip or tell friends and families about the exhibition. Um, I've talked to every child in my life about these products, she said. It's a drastic shift from when I was a kid. Just a few decades ago, smoking was everywhere. It sure was. Joe Camel was a cool ass smoking cartoon. The Flying Guys all smoked in the movies. There were billboards and bus benches, not to mention ads in the corner stores. And there were stores on every corner. Hell, one of the coldest lines of all is Richie Rich. Where you from? Oakland smoking. Of course, Rich was talking about smoking marijuana, but even that usually came rolled in tobacco. Wow. But they're right. I mean, I remember these ads. I remember them plain and clear. And you would see the ads everywhere. They would be everywhere. And I just remember sitting in the back seat of my parents' car and we would drive down the highway and you couldn't go nowhere without seeing a boatload of these cigarette ads. You would just see them everywhere. And not only that, they would have even not only outside of the store, but in the store, they would have, these little postings of where the cigarettes were in the store. So, ladies and gentlemen, please tell me what you think. Everybody don't smoke, but smoking was something that was given to our people on the plantations. And they never stop, driving these cigarettes hard in the Black community for centuries. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.